All right, we are in the NaNoWriMo Prep-A-Thon. And if that is a new configuration of words for you, it stands for National Novel Writing Month. And so during the month of November is a sort of global movement for people to put aside their procrastination and self-doubt and other priorities and say, you know what, I am going to write in the month of November. Many people will set a goal of 50,000 words in the month of November toward their novel, was the original idea. That's why it's called NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, which is technically fiction. And there have been other sort of ones that spring up around nonfiction, academic writing, memoir, other types of little groups here and there as well. What this has done, though, is create a bit of a rhythm in the writing community that as November approaches, we all start talking about, well, how can I get my writing done? Which novel am I going to be working on? When am I going to do the writing? How am I going to make this happen? And so that's why at Paper Raven, we decided we're going to do this NaNoWriMo Prep-A-Thon to help you get your bearings and get organized and settled and prepared so that November can be an amazing month of writing, because a lot can happen in a few weeks of very dedicated writing. So that is why the tagline is so ambitious. Our tagline for this week and next week, it's kind of a 2-week event. This week's all about writing. Next week's all about the overview of the publishing process. And our ambitious tagline is get ready for perhaps the most productive writing month of your life, from setting up your writing routine hacks to creating narrative arcs for one-off books and series, plus a full roadmap of what publishing your book will look like after the writing is done. I'm Morgan, and we did kind of the intro yesterday, so you can either catch up with yesterday or just roll with me. So I'm Morgan, I'm your host here. Now, we are talking about day 2, discover the secrets of power writing, where to find pockets of time in your week to get the writing done. Sorry, how many times have I sent that out? I'm clearly not a proofreader by heart, but I could at least run spell check, right? Where to get the writing done and how to make the most of every single writing session, whether it's a quick 25 minutes or a full-on power writing sprint, so you can easily hit 5,000, 10,000 words or more per week. So yes, if we are thinking about that big audacious goal of 50,000 words in the month of November, for some of us, that's going to be north of 10,000 words per week. We've got about 4 weeks in a month, right? So we might be trying to hit something like 12, 13, 14,000 words in a week, which might feel like a really big number. So let's set some foundational practices here. Common challenges for writers and authors. This might sound familiar to you. If so, you're not alone and there's nothing wrong with you. So these are comments straight from our community of writers. I made the time and decided the place, but I get filled with anxiety when the time comes to write. I find myself doing other tasks on purpose to avoid writing, but on the days I finally get myself to write, I end up enjoying it, and I wonder why I didn't just do it. But then another day comes, same problem. I forget the joy and I feel the anxiety again, especially when I have other personal issues such as lack of sleep, etc. Exactly. Yeah, Casey's like, my socks tend to need sorting. We all do this, right? This is such a human experience. Here's another one that may sound familiar to you. Just getting out of my head and doing it is my challenge. I have a hard time fighting the need to make it perfect right now versus just getting a first draft out. I get so stuck redoing it that I can't ever progress past the first 20 or so pages before burning myself out. Writing is my passion and it's the one thing I feel good at, but I fight myself so much on it. It's this like internal battle that, yes, all of us could probably go to therapy. And, in addition to maybe some of the internal turmoil that's going on, are there some simple practices that we can put into place just to help give ourselves a little bit of that nudge toward the writing? So our question for today, our big question for today is, what are best practices for making the most out of every writing session. Like, what do people do to when they sit down to do the writing? And yesterday I showed you these types of comments where people are writing, over 1,000 words or 2,000 words, 1,400 words in a single writing session. And usually when I share these types of experiences, people are like, wait, but like, what are they doing that's different than what I have tried before? And so I want to share some of those with you today. The first thing that we want to do is to tap into your motivation with the practice of free writing. We actually began this just a little bit yesterday. Remember, yesterday we were really talking much more broadly about the book concept itself, what type of book it's going to be, the structure that we imagine, the type of reader who we think will be reading this, what we hope our reader gets out of it. So that was a bit more of like an academic exercise in a lot of ways. And so if you want to go back and review day one, that would be a great way just to sort of set the frame for your mind and just sort of begin to imagine what that book is going to look like. Today, we're going to go a little bit more into I don't want to sound woo-woo here, but it is the subconscious, right? Is that deeper underlying desire that's perhaps not entirely rational. Like maybe it's hard for us to put words to it, and yet it is a key part of why we do the things that we do. And I'm going to suggest that we tap into this deeper desire, this deeper motivation with an extremely simple practice called free writing. And it's a little bit different than maybe you have encountered before. And if you are like Dell and Diane and Shay, and you've been with me forever, you will know that I have been talking about this practice forever, and you may be surprised that I am still talking about it. However, I believe so deeply that if we all did this type of practice on a very regular basis, we would be not only more productive writers, but happier people and more in tune with our calling and our vocation. And I, not to get too deep into, eschatological types of matters, but the free writing is really important. So this comes from a guy named Mark Levy. And as much as I talk about Mark Levy, I can't believe there's only 187 ratings on this book, because it absolutely changed my life. And I continue to refer back to this book, to tell other people about this book, and use this book. And I've been using this book for years and years and years and years. I mean, 15 years, easy. It's called Accidental Genius: Using Writing to Generate Your Best Ideas, Insight, and Content. And he's a business consultant, or was. I think this is at least the second edition, I believe, came out around 2015, 2017, somewhere in that range. I'm not sure when the first edition came out, so I don't know, if he's still practicing in this same way, but he described in the book his business consulting practice, and he would go into these big C-suite rooms with, your CEO, your CFO, your COO, like all the people, right? And they all want to just get stuff done. And he would come into these rooms and say, okay, I realize we all want to just get stuff done. However, I'm going to make everyone free write before we do anything else. Before we do the first thing, we're all going to sit here together in this room and we are going to free write. And he would get so much pushback on this practice. And I'm going to actually share with you the steps that I've adapted a little bit for writers, because he was using them for business consultants. And every single time he would, force everyone to do the free writing, they would begrudgingly do it. And then everyone would put their pens down, and at least one person in the room would have just had an epiphany that changed the course of that meeting and the strategic direction of the company, right? And so when I first encountered this, I was actually sort of more using it for my business. My business was still very young, like I was, freelance writing, coaching, and book editing and that sort of thing. And so I was dealing with, some business concerns. But as soon as I flipped this into writing books and working with my clients on this, it started unlocking so many things. So without further ado, here are the steps. 7 minutes of free writing is what I recommend you start with. Again, this is all adapted from Levy. You're not going to find these 7 steps in his book. And if you've seen me present these over the years, they sort of morph and change a bit. But this is how I'm currently recommend that we get into this process. So we literally, I mean, I put on my phone, just the regular timer, turn off your notifications and all that, but do not disturb. If you haven't found the do not disturb function on your phone, that would be a great thing to find today. Find do not disturb, put it on do not disturb. I'm a mother of 4 children and I still use do not disturb because guess what? The school nurse calls, and if I don't answer right away, they just hang out in the school nurse's office for 20 minutes and they're fine. Perfect. Yes, Marianne's like, I already love this. So put the phone on do not disturb. Set a timer for 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Like we can find 7 minutes somewhere. I know we're super busy people, and yet there's something really nice about it's less than 10 minutes. Like it takes me longer to fold laundry than to do this. And it's incredibly powerful. 7 minutes, open a blank document or a notebook if you like to free write, and ask yourself a question, sort of like set a question in your mind. I provided some prompts. These are some of my favorite questions or questions I like to use in working with authors. What might I write about? And you can just sort of set that question in your mind. What might I write about today? What might I write about? And I like the word might because it's open. It's not, what am I going to write about? That feels very, like you're setting a concrete direction. What might I write about? I'm open. There's no right or wrong. I'm just curious, right? Unplug the phone. Exactly. I used to, I don't know if I still have any of these around. I'm looking down at my desk kind of shelf area. I used to get these little timers, just kitchen timers, right? Use a kitchen timer and turn off your phone if you prefer. But set a frame, set a question. What might I write about? Another one I like is, why is this book important to me? Particularly if we have let it languish for a while and we were passionate about the book, maybe, a few months ago or a few years ago, and it's riding around in the back of our brain with this obligation attached to it. If we want to reconnect with that deeper motivation, sometimes it helps to do a session of free writing around, why is this book important to me? Like, why does this keep coming up? Why does this tug at me? Another angle of this same motivation is, how do I hope the reader is changed by this book? And this works for all types of books, right? This definitely works for fiction because often when we're writing novels, it's because we want that moment of inspiration, imagination. We want to bring adventure and good versus evil and moments of, romance. Like we want to bring this, sorry, I just whacked the mic. I got really into it. We want to bring this different type of human experience to our readers. We just want to revel in, the danger and the passion and the love conquers all, or the good wins in the end. Like there's something that we really want to bring to the reader in this story. Or maybe it's just something new. Maybe even if we write horror or something, maybe it's I want to bring that blood pumping moment to the reader where they're on the edge of their seat. What is it that when the reader is reading this storyline with these characters, what do you hope that they are experiencing that keeps them coming back for page after page, chapter after chapter, with this adventure? Nonfiction folks, for you, it's more like, why do I think this information is going to be meaningful to them? Or memoir, what do I hope my story encourages or inspires or helps people to realize? So any of those 3 questions, just pick one. You can't do it wrong here. Just pick one and kind of just repeat it to yourself a little bit. Set the question sort of in the working, part of your brain, and let your brain start to sort of repeat that question a few times. All right. Then you hit start. Start, and you write. You write as fast as you physically can. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about punctuation. If you have to, close your eyes. If the little red squiggles on the laptop drive you crazy, then close your eyes. And the sentences don't have to make sense. The words can all be spelled wrong. They can run into each other. You can type the same word over and over again. Just don't stop. And push yourself a little faster, a little faster, a little faster, a little faster. And you will feel uncomfortable. Your brain, your editor's brain, your inner critic is going to say, whoa, I do not like writing fast. I would much prefer that you slow down and spell check and make this make sense, because I do not approve. And we are actually going to shove that inner critic, shove that editor out of the way and say, please just sit over here for 7 minutes. Because what we are trying to do is to get that unconscious part of your brain that doesn't usually get to surface. We're trying to pull that to the surface, and it doesn't come out in linear, logical, well-spoken words. It comes out in a mess of associations, and we will bounce from this idea to that idea, and holy moly, where did that come from? But in order for us to let those associations surface, the inner critic, the editor, has to set to the side. And that is the beauty of only doing this for 7 minutes. You are acknowledging to your sort of front conscious critical mind that we are going to write way faster than we feel comfortable. And don't worry, it's only for 7 minutes. So push yourself to write faster than you are comfortable writing. And when the timer rings, stop. Now, you'll be surprised the first time you do this, like minute 1 and 2 and 3 is super uncomfortable, kind of hate it. I don't even know why I'm doing this, but Morgan told me that I should. So, okay, fine, I'm doing this. By the time you hit minute 6 and then the timer rings, very likely you're going to have found something. You're going to be like, whoa, I'm writing and I'm writing fast. And I think I just caught onto something, but I'm not quite caught onto it. And you're going to want to keep going. I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that as soon as that timer rings, hands down, pen down, take a breath, stop. Because you are making you're negotiating with that frontal part, that conscious part, the inner critic. And you're saying, look, I'm asking you to do something very uncomfortable. And I promise it's only for 7 minutes. That's what makes it possible for that part of your brain to sort of sit over to the side. If you break that promise, it's going to be hard to convince your brain to do it again. Like you're going to feel that resistance. Oh, I don't want to. The last time I did this, it wasn't 7 minutes. It was 25 minutes and I don't have time for this and da, 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 da. Right. So it is actually important that we're going to do this for 7 minutes. And then when the timer rings, we're going to stop. And you just lean back, take a breath, and you don't even have to reread what you just wrote. You can, if it makes any sense. But you might, just sort of peruse some of the things that you were writing, and very likely there will be some new idea or a resurfacing of an idea that you had forgotten, and it will reconnect you to something important. Now, I can't say what that thing is going to be. All I can do is recommend that this practice will help you to reconnect with what that is. Maybe it's something you're aware of. Maybe it's something you've never been aware of before, but this is how it's going to come through for you. So 7 minutes of free writing. You can start to, the next time you come back for free writing, you could do 10, you could do 15. I feel like I max out around 20 because you're writing so fast. It's very uncomfortable. It feels a little bit like the adrenaline's pumping, so 20 minutes for me is like a really long session. I like 7. It's quick, it's easy. If I'm feeling really like I want to sit down and noodle something, it might be 15, but somewhere in there, I think is appropriate. So once this is priming the pump. This is reconnecting with that deeper desire and that motivation to get it going. How do we keep it going? We keep it going by developing a practice of tracking your writing progress. So notice that I'm going to actually separate a free writing session is not you're not writing the first draft of your book. You're not writing the plot. You're not writing chapters. You're using that to reignite your motivation. When you actually come down and you say, okay, I am going to work on this next chapter. And we're going to get to narrative arcs. I know it's always like, well, which comes first? Should we talk about writing practices? Should we talk about narrative arcs? For the purposes of this NaNoWriMo prep, I wanted us to talk about writing sessions first, and then we'll get to narrative arcs, sort of deciding what we're writing and in what order. But just know that when we do sit down to work on a chapter, write a scene, work through a concept, we are going to be tracking writing progress. And I mean something actually very specific. And so this is where it would be good to head on over to this. In fact, let me see if I can get that link for us again. I think I had it over here. Okay, cool. Yes. Yep. So morning pages is another idea. That did not become clickable. Hold on. Some people have even mentioned to me like automatic writing, things like that. I think the important thing here is that we're not just journaling about sort of our day or anything in particular. We really are setting in the forefront of our mind something about our book specifically. What might I write about? Why is this book important to me? How do I hope the reader's changed by this book? And then that timer and writing very, very quickly is an important part of this process. Okay. So when you go to paperravenbooks.com/nano-resources, it takes you to our private author community. And I've got a couple of spreadsheets for you here. So the first one, I would recommend that you use, it's called the Writing Momentum Tracker. And I've called it different names over the years. And I'm sure you folks who've been with me for many years, you will have seen something like this. I like to use this especially in the beginning, where we are tracking week by week and we're noting the date, so we might put in here, I like to do year, month, day, it doesn't matter how you like to do it. So I might put the date itself. I might say it's Tuesday. I might say it's, I'm starting at 10:30, and I'm just going to start writing. I'm going to write for however long I decided I was going to write. Maybe I write for 25 minutes and, I make a note of how many words I write. So maybe it's 516 words, and I can make any quantitative notes that I want to here, right? So, qualitative notes that I want to. So this helps me to take some quantitative measures about how many words do I typically write per minute, and how many, what am I experiencing? Either what am I writing about, or is there something about my day? Did I not sleep well last night? Did I have, a frustrating conversation with someone that is distracting me? Whatever it is. And this is not about judgment. This is about curiosity. I'm curious. Do I write better in the mornings or the afternoons or the evenings? Do I write more during the week or more on the weekend? Do I write better? Is it a more enjoyable experience when it's a shorter session or a longer session? So this gives you just a little bit of space to explore that. And I like it week by week. You can, of course, you can click on my keyboard, it's Control, and you can insert, another line. And if you have more writing sessions, customize this to whatever works for you. And if you had a particular word count, if you wanted to, let's say, I usually recommend 5,000 words. Did I meet 5,000 words? Maybe it's a yes or maybe it's a no. Did I meet it? Did I not meet it? what were my results? What did I accomplish that I'm proud of? Did I write a scene? Did I finish a chapter? Did I struggle with something? Was there something that was just like surprisingly difficult? I could not figure out, how to move this character from this location to this other location, and I spent a lot of time figuring that out, and what's my goal for next week? Do I want to write 6 times and hit 6,000 words? What is my goal? So this spreadsheet is spacious enough that you can start to notice your patterns. And what's always surprising to me is that we make assumptions about when our best writing time is based on our experiences of doing highly analytical work. So we think about when we're productive. I'm really great at churning through my inbox, my email inbox, or turning through my numbers, or paying bills, or getting through my task list. Like, I am super productive these hours. And so we tend to think, well, that means that's when I will also be most, make the most progress in my writing. However, it's not always the same. Sometimes our analytical mind might really like fire a lot, be very active, be very productive at one point in the day, but our creative mind is maybe a little bit looser, more relaxed, and it might be easier to access that creativity in a different part of the day. So personal experience, I know that the reason I have these sessions starting at 10 a.m., on Central Time is because that's when I know that I do my best, presenting and speaking and sort of being on, so to speak. I try to have my meetings kind of in the middle of the day, because that's when I feel like I'm best able to communicate clearly and really, be able to present well. However, my writing is much better when my mind's more quiet. For me, that might be kind of early morning or early evening are usually good times for me, when things are just a little bit more calm, right? My energy is actually not as high. And for some reason, that just helps me access my creativity better. I wouldn't know that about myself, except that I track my writing progress. And so that's what I'm encouraging you to kind of go on a bit of a journey on, especially over the next couple of weeks. Why not? We've got, it's October 10th right now. We've got basically 3 weeks until NaNoWriMo. That would be perfect. You can use the next 3 weeks to just do some experimental writing sessions. I recommend free writing beforehand, but then if you do your 7 minutes of free writing and you're like, okay, I feel ready to write, pull out this spreadsheet if you want to use this spreadsheet, or you can just rewrite it. You can pull open, you can just, get a piece of paper and just create the columns on a piece of paper and use whatever feels exciting to you, basically. So I offer this for you to download and to use in the way that makes most sense for you. It does have a full 24 weeks here, because when we're working with folks in kind of a one-on-one capacity, we're usually aiming, it has 21 weeks. We're usually aiming for something like 5 to 6 months of writing, the first draft especially. And so this is the thing that will help you to figure out, okay, what days of the week are usually best for me, what time of day, long session versus short session, and really start to be able to estimate how many words is reasonable for you. The second resource that we have for you here is the NaNoWriMo tracker. So Heather Price, our director of editorial, made one for the writing group folks who are doing NaNoWriMo. And I think this one's really cool. You'll notice that it is very specific in that we're aiming for 50,000 words in 30 days, right? And so if you want to go hardcore and you want to see at a glance, am I tracking towards 50,000 words or not? This is a spreadsheet where you can stay hyper-focused on that. And it can be like day 1 through 30, put your word count in at the end of the day. And so, however many sessions you write that day, just, at the end, you do the word count and subtract from the previous days. So actually, I'm going to do a quick example. So here are my notes. While I'm in here, you know what? I'm going to fix this typo. Done, not down. So for instance, if this was my Google Doc where I was keeping my draft, you'll notice, let me zoom in just a little bit for you here because I know, oh no, that's not exactly what I wanted. I wanted to zoom in to make this part. Here we go. This is Google, but the same thing exists in Word or Pages or whatever you're using. If you click Tools, word count. There's also a shortcut on a Mac. You can hold down Command-Shift-C, and it will share with you the word count. Oh no, now I'm too zoomed in. It will tell you, look, this document has 534 words. And in fact, when I am actively working on like a long piece of writing, I will often in that particular document check this box that says display word count while typing. So, you know, I might note, okay, I started with 534 words, and, you know, maybe you can even put like a little, you know, if you want to put like a little divider here or something, you know, put some pluses or whatever you want to put in here, and then start writing again. You'll notice, well, that's not even words. It's not going to count them as words. I forget what it is, the lazy, whatever it is, frog. It's not frog. Maybe it's river. Okay, you'll notice that it's going to update. Now it's 543 words. Thank you, dog. It rhymed. Fix it. Hold on, dog. So sorry, I'm kind of zoomed in. So it is acting a little bit funny. Frogs are fun. How do I zoom back out to see? Maybe if I zoom out like this. Where are you? I'm trying to demonstrate that Google Docs is easy. Google Docs, you should be cooperative in this. Oh, here we go. I was just funnily zoomed in. Okay, so now if I do my word count, I now see, oh, I have 544 words. That means I wrote, right, quick subtraction, I wrote 10 words. So that's how you can keep track sort of session over session, is just paying attention to your word count from one session to the other and doing some quick subtraction. And that's how we're gonna notate it. And you can use whichever one you want. I would recommend, here's what I would recommend. I would recommend you spend about 3 weeks working with the roomier one. Where is it? Where did you go? Okay. Spend about 3 weeks working with the first one, because it will help you again to see the different sessions, the time, the notes that you're making, and you'll notice some patterns. So for October, use this one. Get as many writing sessions in as you can and make some notes for yourself on what works well for you. Then November 1st, if you are participating in NaNoWriMo, start using this one. This will help you to stay super focused on that 50,000 words. And 50,000 words can get you really far in writing a book. So Heather's got some notes here for us. And yeah, if you're writing 50,000 words, your daily target is 1,667. So yeah, and these will auto update. So just for fun, right? And that's how I would so encourage all of us to approach this. This is a neat challenge. What an interesting thing to try. If we've done it before, can we do it again or better than last time? If we've never even tried, I don't know, what could we do if we were really focusing on our word count and our productivity? So that's the kind of posture I would recommend. Okay, so that's tracking your writing progress. So first we talked about free writing to kind of prime the pump and connect with that deeper motivation. And some associations are going to pop out, some realizations are going to happen, and it just takes 7 minutes, and it's exciting and it's fun and it works. The second practice is tracking your progress, because what gets measured gets improved, right? If you've ever counted your calories. It's amazing how you eat fewer calories when you're counting them, right? When you're counting your words, it's amazing how you'll write more words. It just happens because our brains are amazing, and they know that when we choose to focus on something, we really care about it, right? And then next, I have a little bit of a more philosophical perspective for you to consider. There's the resources. And that is with this idea of writer's block, because inevitably, when we start tracking our progress, we will have sessions where we just don't know what to write. Now, again, Thursday, we're going to talk about narrative arcs. So we're going to be talking about constructing kind of the whole plan for the book. So we're not really talking about scene setting or chapter orders or things like that. We're thinking about writer's block as in that, like, I don't know, that malaise of like, I just don't feel like writing, like nothing's coming. I just don't want to. I don't know why I don't want to, right? I have a different way of looking at writer's block that I think is very practical, pragmatic, helpful on a day-to-day basis. I think of writer's block as a ratio of input to output. And when I say input, I mean reading, researching, watching, listening, consuming, which we do a lot of, right? If you sort of play through in your mind's eye, like your average day, how much of our day is just receiving input? And not that it's a bad thing. You're receiving input right now. I'm talking at you. You're looking at what I'm presenting to you. You're listening to me talk. You are receiving input. But, like anything that we are looking at on our phone or even reading in books or newspapers. I read a newspaper the other day. It was such a fun experience. Remember when we used to read newspapers? Or watching on TV or listening on the radio, or you've got a podcast going while you're doing the dishes or whatever. Like think of all the times that we have something coming in our eyes or in our ears. That's occupying brain bandwidth. Like we are allowing other people's words in our brains in a weird way. I mean, we can take this to a very strange place, but anytime that you are reading what someone else has written, or you are listening and maybe watching them at the same time, but listening to other people's words, their words are the predominant thing in your brain. That's input. Output is you contributing to the world, right? You are creating something new. You're creating new words. For us as writers, it is often writing or talking or maybe organizing our notes or taking notes, presenting, teaching. We are outputting words at that point. So actually, I am outputting to you. And I would even say, like when I was getting my slides together this morning, I was outputting because I was arranging things and how am I going to say this and thinking about the words that I was going to give to you, right? And I have often found that when working with a writer who is experiencing writer's block, if we can shift the ratio of input to output, that can actually help to unlock that experience of writer's block. Does it cure writer's block? I don't know, but it shifts something in a real way that opens up the desire to continue writing. And so you might just think about it. If you are experiencing a lack of motivation that you might want to call writer's block, is it because you have way too much input right now? Maybe we need to output. Maybe that's free writing. Maybe that's teaching a workshop, a class. Maybe that's just talking to people. If, on the other hand, we feel like we have been writing so much and talking so much and presenting so much and all this, do we need to kind of fill ourselves up a little bit more? Do we need to read a great book? Do we need to research something that we find curious? Do we need to watch a fascinating show or movie, right? Those aren't bad things. It's just finding that balance. And then as I've gotten a little bit older, so I've actually been talking about writer's block in this way for many, many years. And I started as a writing coach and a book editor in my 20s, right? So I've been doing this for a while. I'm now 38, which is almost 40. And over the years, I have discovered that there is kind of a third bucket, maybe, of things that have become much more important to me, especially now that I have teenagers. Well, just one teenager at the moment, but the other is right on our heels. Sometimes we just need an in-between. Maybe we just need to be occasionally. And I know that for some of you, you're like, oh, Morgan, I discovered this decades ago when you were still a youngin'. But I think that sometimes we get so focused on, am I doing something productive, that we forget just to be, right? And that could be walking, that could be exercising, that could be gardening, that could be working with our hands in some way, that could be relaxing, that could be meditating, but just that in-between space where we're like back in our body, we run these, these writing groups, and we have these discussions sometimes where it's like, we're not just brains on a stick. It's not just that our entire world happens inside of our head, and then the only valuable things are what we produce, in our books or in our work or in our writing. We are bodies too. And there's something about doing these rhythmic things like walking and exercising and breathing, for heaven's sake, that just calls us back into who we are. So what I could have done is put all three of these things onto one slide. But if you think about, am I experiencing this, do I have this experience of writer's block? Is it maybe because I've been inputting a lot and I need to find some outlets for output? Have I been outputting a lot and I just need to fill myself up with some input to inspire me? That can unlock a lot of things. And then in between the input and the output, am I allowing myself to just be occasionally and let things rest and let things settle? And one of the reasons that Mark Levy's book, Accidental Genius, continues to sort of ride around in my brain, and I will randomly recall, certain sections or scenes of his book, is he really highlights this idea that our subconscious is doing so much more work than we realize. Our brains are incredible at associations and patterns and creating, new things. And so often we just don't give it the time to sit and simmer and be. I think that's part of what being does, so that as we input and as we output, there is something that happens in our brain, and being helps it to coalesce in a lot of ways. So that if we'll be for a bit and then come back and maybe do a free writing session, we'll be surprised, at what might come of it. So summing it all up for us, these are the best practices. Well, of course, this is my opinion. You might have additional opinions, but in my, 15 going on 16 years as a writing coach, these are what I have come back to again and again and again and again for writers across scenarios, across situations, across writing styles. And I think that's what I hope that I can bring to you. That's a perspective that you might not always get, because if you talk to an individual writer about what works for them, they have probably developed their own idiosyncratic writing habits and triggers and processes and, things like that work really well for them, and so when you talk to these folks who've written 6 books or 12 books or 28 books, they have found their groove, and I don't want to teach you my groove. I don't want to teach you a specific groove. Instead, I want to share with you what I have seen across many, many, many writers, and how each individual person has used these practices to find their own groove. I think that's what's important, is giving you tools that you can take and say, this is my groove. We don't all have to be like Hemingway and drink ourselves silly and write at midnight, when we've, finally put aside the inner critic because we're just so drunk. Like if that was the way that all books had to be written, that would be a very sad state of affairs for humans. Instead, the beauty of creativity is that we each have our own patterns and rhythms and ways of tapping into that creativity. So I want to help you over the next few weeks find your pattern. And so these are the tools that have helped people do that. Prime the writing sessions with free writing. I love to do this every day, once a day, every day. It's like brushing your teeth. You just feel so good afterward. Tracking your writing progress. I know it can be a little bit of a drudgery at the beginning, but as you see the progress coming together and you're like, oh, wow, I really did write, 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 words last week. You are so proud of yourself. And it's a reality check, because if you're like, oh, I thought I was writing more than that, it enables you to say, you know what, if this is important to me, I do need to have more writing sessions, So tracking your writing progress, and then managing is such a boring word, but like being intentional about the input and the output and the being. Are we giving ourselves the experience of all three? The input, filling ourselves up, the output, contributing words to the world, and some, whether it's just one person or whether it's the page, and then just being, letting that simmering and the association and the creativity really just sort of swirl around in our body, so that when we come back to input and to output, we are good vessels. Okay. I want to land us with a kind of a central idea, more than an idea, an assumption that we might have, an assumption that I want to reframe for you. I have found this writing around in my own brain, and I have found this writing around in the brain of many, many, many other authors and writers. There is this thought that I need long, luxurious writing sessions in order to make significant progress on my book. We all want to be Walden at Walden. We all want to be Thoreau at Walden Pond. Sorry, I was thinking, I had the big picture of Walden book cover in my brain. We all want to be Henry David Thoreau at Walden Pond, where we don't have anything to do all day except walk around the pond and come back and write. That sounds amazing for many of us. And yet it sets up this false need. And I want to offer a reframe that I think is a little bit more helpful, a little bit more practical. In short, powerful writing sessions, I can keep momentum on my book. And if I get a longer session, I will know how to make the most of that time. I like this reframe because it values a short writing session. 25 minutes is perfect. 25 minutes is a fantastic amount of time to sit down and make a little bit of progress on your book, to keep it fresh, to keep it rolling, to keep it working in your mind. And the benefit is when we stack up those short sessions, on the occasion that we are able to set aside more time, an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, we know what works for us. We know what day of the week and what time of day we're going to put those writing sessions in. And those are going to be so much more productive for us because we've built the foundation with shorter writing sessions. Here's what I have found working with authors for many years over a variety of situations and circumstances and writing styles. When you find the days and times and the setup, we're going to talk tomorrow more about the setup, that works for you, you'll make significantly more progress, not only on this book, but every book you ever write. When we can build these habits, we will write this book much more quickly. You could finish, quite literally, I have seen this time and time again. You could write an entire first draft of your book in a matter of weeks. I have seen it done time and time again. It doesn't always happen in weeks. Sometimes it's months, sometimes it's years, and yet it can happen in just a few weeks. And then once you discover your habits, your grooves, what really works for you, the next time you sit down to write a book or anything lengthy, really, you're going to come at it so much more easily with more joy, more anticipation, more eagerness. It affects your entire life as a writer. And that's so exciting. So exciting. So keep up with your writing momentum tracker when it's even when it's inconvenient. So it will be inconvenient. Spoiler alert, you're going to hate this thing, but then you will come to love it. Load up the spreadsheet on your phone if you need to. If you're a mobile person, make this spreadsheet available on your phone with the apps on your phone. Or if you're a paper person, just get I wish I had do I have a notebook next to me? How do I not have a notebook next to me? Well, this is kind of like a notebook. I was going to get it. This is my pilot log, but it's like a notebook. If you just need a notebook to carry around in your bag with you, just put a notebook in your bag and just jot it down as you go. And if you ever put it in a spreadsheet, that you can, you don't have to, but just keep the record, keep the priority, keep it with you. So challenge for today, try 7 minutes of free writing, and it will very likely prime a writing session for you. They don't have to be back to back. If you want to free write in the morning and then do a writing session in the afternoon, totally fine. So try some free writing today and use that writing momentum tracker. When you sit down to do your writing session, your next writing session, again, I realize a little bit of cart before the horse because we have not yet talked about narrative arcs. That's coming on Thursday. But if you've got a work in progress already, perfect. Just start tracking right now. And remember, no judgment here, just curiosity. And think about your input and your output and your being, and just remind yourself that if you're feeling a lack of motivation, it might be as simple as just free writing for a session or reading a great book or taking a walk. Sometimes our motivation is really that simple. So, all right, I see there's been some action in the chat. Let me come back to you over here. Okay, cool. Yes, the recordings are at paperhavenbooks.com/nano-resources. I'll drop that in the chat. And as soon as this recording gets processed, I'll drop the recording there too. That takes you to our private author community. It looks like Facebook, but thank goodness it is not Facebook. There are no dings and notifications and ads here. It's just, this is our little corner of the web where we have a private author community. And this is where we post about our upcoming live events like this NaNoWriMo Prep-A-Thon. And this is where I am putting your replays and resources right here. I don't count free writing toward anything. Free writing is really just about the experience for me. And when I'm working with a writer, that's what I encourage them to think about as well. It doesn't ever have to be useful. I mean, we don't ever have to count the words. We don't ever have to use the writing itself. It is just the experience of letting those ideas come out and seeing what surprises us. Yeah. Let me scroll back up just a little bit. Oh, thanks. Yep. Rick says, I get some of my best ideas doing yard work or shoveling snow, says Margaret. Yes, exactly. Yes, Karen, it's not about us following what you do, but using these tools to find what works best for each of us. Exactly. That's exactly what I want each of you to be able to discover. Clifton, oh, my best ideas come from dreams, a dream diary in my nightstand. Many writers I've worked with, I think it's the same process of like the associations and the creativity that happens in the subconscious. I think it can come out through dreams as well. So I think that's fantastic, Clifton. Yeah. A lot of writers I've worked with have dreams give them realizations for sure. Oh, good. Don says I laughed so hard about the Hemingway thing. I saw another Hemingway thing. Yeah, it was how Hemingway got rid of his inner critic. Exactly. Yep. House, classical music, jazz can help with finding a rhythm. Oh, I love that. Yes. I've heard, especially action adventure writers will turn on like movie soundtracks to get the adrenaline pumping as they're writing like an action scene. Oh, Casey says Hemingway was actually a morning writer and never wrote drunk. He claimed people were mixing him up with Faulkner. I apologize, Hemingway. I meant to say Faulkner. Thank you for fact checking me, Casey. Yep, Margaret says instead of coffee breaks, I used my 15-minute breaks at work to write. I love that. Yep, I write during my kids' appointments. Plus, there's no Wi-Fi there, so I can focus. Yes, Elizabeth, you have those recordings. I tend to track word count always. Good, Casey. Well, Casey, this is not the first time you've heard me say this, so I'm very glad that that habit has stuck. Yep, Margaret says, I cannot write at a coffee shop. I'm hyper aware of my surroundings. Oh, tomorrow we're going to talk about surroundings, environment. It's going to be so good. Yes, I think we got that in the chat. Here's that link one more time. I'm going to send it out. Okay, perfect. Good. Research while I write. Casey says, I'm sure he forgives you. Thank you. We're going to talk about that as well, because actually, and we're at time, so I'm not going to go deep into this, but I do recommend writing sessions separate from research sessions. So we'll talk about some best practices with that, but they need to be separate. Especially working with academics. Academics are the worst at combining these two things. But if you need a question answered, you drop an asterisk in the draft. And then you come back later, you put together a list of things you're going to research, and then you just research. Yeah. Even if it's just a little bit, just separate, even if it's just like, okay, I'm setting aside my draft, I'm going to go research now. Just make note of the time. I'm done writing. I'm going to go do a research session. We'll get into that more deeply later, but I just want to nip that in the bud real quick. Research is separate from writing. Okay. I hope day 2 has been good for you. Day 3, we're talking about writing hacks, like your environment, the sensory experience of writing. How do we train our brains to click into writing flow? Really cool stuff tomorrow. So see you same time, same place, and I'll let you know when the replay is ready for you. All right. Bye, everybody.